Welcome to Wired to Lead, the podcast where neuroscience meets leadership. Hi, I'm Julia Lefevre, and each week we're going to explore how our brains impact our behavior and how we can rewire our brains so that we can lead with clarity, confidence, and impact. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Well, hi, Bill. I am so excited to have you on here. We had some technical difficulty. It was hard to get going, but I like to say true leaders will persevere. So thank you for
No,
persevering.
no endeavor ever goes off on the first time without it, some sort of a hitch. So I'm glad it's out of our way.
Exactly. Well, I just am excited to kind of pick your brain about your leadership journey. And so just tell us a little bit about Bill Maness and his leadership journey.
Well, it kind of goes back to probably my high school days when I was, an athlete, wanted to be the best. And I tended to be the person that everybody gravitated towards, not because I was the best player on the team, but because I was the one who probably worked the hardest and then was very vocal about how that hard work translated into all of us contributing our parts. Uh, and then I went on to play college football. And I, I think my first leadership defining moment was when I went to college at Baylor as a walk-on football player and actually made the team midway through the season, contributed to the team through the rest of the season, and then was told because I transferred as a junior. Uh, Actually, wasn't even told. I was just shown the door and said, "Thank you for your contribution. We don't have a need for you anymore." And the way it was communicated was very disheartening and actually was my first real life lesson in that it doesn't matter if you do what you say you're going to do. Not all of the time are the other people going to do what they said they're going to do. And you have to be able to recognize that and I guess not to be so naive about it. I just assumed that if somebody tells me they're going to do something, that if I do my part, they'll do their part. And it was a lesson, a hard lesson, because it kind of ended my college career. It kind of set me on a path that maybe I didn't see. But that's also, looking back on it now, one of the things that actually helped define who I was going to be was that I didn't let it stop me. It's like, okay, this is over. What's next? And I found that to be very true with a lot of leaders that I am very respectful for and have learned a lot from, is they're always looking for what's next. You learn from the lessons you have, good lessons, hard lessons. Usually the hardest ones mean the most. But you're always looking forward. And with the same attitude of I'm going to outwork everybody, and I hope I can be recognized for that, and then be rewarded for it. And there were a couple times where I outworked everybody, demonstrated my leadership skills, and wasn't rewarded for it, and so I moved on. And it's like, those little moves of moving on got me out of the path I was on and put me on a new path to where I ended up, 22 years ago, starting my own company with absolutely no clue how to run a company, no clue that I was going to be successful doing it, but with this ideal that I have a vision of what I think it's going to be, and I think I'm just going to work really hard to make it happen. And here we are 22, 23 years later, and now I'm at the twilight of my career looking back going, okay, you were right in some ways. There were a lot of ways I was wrong, but you learned and you kept growing and you kept pursuing and you just kept trying to be better every day and do something more. And I think that is probably the on my leadership journey is probably the one thing I can look back on and say, you know what, it wasn't that you were always right. It wasn't that your vision or your idea was going to work. It was that you were willing to try it. And if it didn't work, move on to whatever was next. And I think that's kind of how I built my company, surrounding myself with leaders who see the world through the same vision of we're always going to try to be better, and we'll make some mistakes and we'll learn from them and we'll keep moving forward.
So it seems like you just always got up every time you were
Yeah.
knocked down, so to speak, starting in college with being cut from the team. And And then over and over throughout, I know you even had a similar situation in a workplace where you're performing and you're told, we don't need you anymore.
Yeah, or we didn't see you going to the next level with us, which is what they had promised.
Right.
Actually, it's interesting because when I started the company 22 years ago, I'd worked for another company doing this exact same thing for 3 years. And the reason I started the company I have is because I got fired from that company because their definition of good service and my definition were not even on the same page. They felt like my only role was to get clients, but their role was to keep them. And they didn't do a very good job. And I was very vocal about that, when you're 90% of your compensation comes from commission of taking care of clients and they don't get taken care of, I personally lose money. And so I took it very personally and projected that, and they didn't like that. They just told me, look, this is your job, and if you can't do that job, and I said, well, why would I do that job if you're not going to do your job? Because then I'm fulfilling this end that just has no end to it, and I'm the one losing in the deal. And they said, well, if that's how you feel, you probably shouldn't work here anymore. So I didn't work there anymore. So
It's so interesting because as I hear you share these stories, I I hear that you are Bill. You show up as Bill. You have certain expectations for others. You are the hardest worker on the team, and I heard you say I expected other people to step up and work hard working at this job, and didn't feel like the others were living up to that. And you had something in you that just wasn't going to compromise who you were and what you expected.
yeah, that's pretty much it. I have very high standards, and I try to live up to them myself, and I try to surround myself with people that have equal to or even higher standards than I do. And then together we can really do some great things, but it's only together. It's not any individual. It is literally a team effort to do what we do every day and how we do it. But more importantly, why we do it. Because at the end of the day, we have to fulfill our own personal missions and our own personal visions to be able to get where we want to go individually. And sometimes that's being at the head of the ship and giving everybody else the opportunity to be on board. And sometimes it's being a member of the ship. And what I've really learned about my leadership team is that while they all have these great leadership qualities about them, they have one thing, not all of them, but most of them have one thing in common with each other that they don't have with me. And that's a very high level and tolerance of risk. And I happen to have a very high tolerance and level of risk. I'm not afraid to take chances. I'm not afraid to fail and move on. And they are a little safer than I am. Doesn't preclude them from being great leaders, but that quality isn't in everybody either. And what it really shows, honestly, is that you can be a leader and not be at the tip of the spear. You don't have to be at the top of the food chain to be a leader. You can be a leader in any part of the organization you're in just by exhibiting the ability to think bigger and work in concert with everyone else and show an initiative to be the best you can be. Those are great leadership qualities that don't necessarily have risk attached to them. And let's face it, not everybody can tolerate risk. I understand that because I'm married to a woman that cannot tolerate risk. And so it's really one of those things where I just accept that, but it doesn't preclude me from developing them as better leaders. It doesn't preclude them or me from being the best we can be together. And I think that's what's important in the whole scheme of things is assembling a team and surrounding yourself with people that see the vision and want to help accomplish it and are willing to put in the work and the heart to get that done.
Absolutely. And I would imagine that there's some benefit in them not all being like you and having the same strengths. And probably not a coincidence that you married someone who's a little different because, I would also assume that they have some strengths that you don't, and that it's the combination that makes the team work really well.
I've always said if you're in a room and you're the smartest person at the table, you're at the wrong table. Because I need to be surrounded by people that are smarter than me and all the things I'm not smart in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things I'm not smart in, let me tell you. But the fact is that I have this ability or gift, it's whatever God gave me, that allows me to not let my ego get in the way of the greater good. It just doesn't. I don't really have uh, an ego when it comes to taking care of our clients and taking care of my employees. There's no ego there. It's really, it's this altruistic vision of who we should be and what we should be, and that's what we strive for. And I really don't care who does it or who gets the credit for it. And I'm the last person that deserves the credit for it because I'm actually not the one doing all the work. But to me, that's a separator because there's a lot of people that are put into leadership that have the egos that want to get the credit. And to me, that's really not about leadership, but they're in those positions where they lead or they're people under their charge, but they're not acting as leaders. They're acting as bosses. And I think I've been really fortunate that I have that gift, that it doesn't matter to me. It really, truly doesn't. I don't get any satisfaction out of accomplishing something on myself if there's nobody around me to share it with.
Sure. It's interesting, and I'm curious what your theory is about what differentiates those who are really out for the greater good. They're so committed to the purpose and they're aligned with the mission and vision of the organization. And then there's others whose ego gets in the way. What do you see that differentiates those two types of leaders?
I think it's an innate attitude of service above self.
Mm.
Whatever it is, serving your common man, serving your fellow workers, serving the people that you take care of, your clients, your employees, whatever that means. But it's serving somebody else. That is what drives you. That is what is really innate within leaders that create environments that have really dynamic uh, qualities to them and also are just bigger than themselves. And I think that comes from having that quality within you, that you're really in it for everybody else. I mean, Henry Ford I keep some pictures on my wall in my conference room, but Henry Ford once said, a company dedicated to outstanding customer service will have only one problem with profits. They will be embarrassingly large. And I think the key is, and his message is, that if you're doing good by the people you serve, then the rewards will be greater than you ever imagined. And so don't work for the rewards, work to serve. And it's just, I think humanity has figured that out as well, that the greatest good we can do is to serve our fellow man. And at the end of the day, when you look back on it, did you accomplish that every day? No. Did you make some decisions that maybe weren't in the best interest of either your clients or yourself? Yeah, probably a lot. But at the end of the day, if you endeavor to do that every day, then you can look back in your history and say, okay, I did okay. And I tell my wife, who's very much a perfectionist, perfection is the enemy of great. I don't know who said that. It's not I didn't coin that term, but at the end of the day, it's very true. You can pursue perfection, but sometimes you just have to settle for greatness, and greatness is okay.
Absolutely. So it's interesting that, you have so valued serving people and your company is about that. So tell us a little bit about Syndeo.
Well, we are an HR outsourcing company that has several different business models that we work under, primarily the PEO, which is a professional employer organization model, where we partner with our clients to take on their employer responsibilities, which include payroll and all the related activities with payroll, benefits and benefits management, risk management and workers' compensation, and then all the HR compliance things that they have to do as employers that they're required to do by law. Our role in that relationship is that the client is in business to take care of their customers, to either build something or provide services. And all the stuff that we do is the stuff they have to do that has nothing to do with their business. It has everything to do with being an employer. So we take that burden off of them and put it on us and say, you go do you, and we'll do all this other stuff behind the scenes that you have to do, and hopefully do it better and more efficiently than you can do it yourself. And it's a business model that's worked. It works all over the country. There are millions of employees across the country that work in this business model through PEOs and other forms of it. We're just a small fish. I like to say I'm the big bass in a small pond, but I'm not a whale. There are some whales out there, and they're in the ocean. There's a lot of big players, but in our world, we're in a very small pond in Kansas, and we like to think of ourselves as the big fish in that pond, and we treat ourselves that way as the way we serve our clients.
So, what has been the most rewarding part of pursuing this type of business for you?
I think it's probably seeing the growth of the people around me.
Mhm.
I've got a lot of employees that have been with me 12, 15. I even have one of my leadership team has been with me 21 years of the 22 and a half years we've been in business. Um, it's been the only job she's had out of college. And she's now part of my leadership team in charge of all things technology. There you go. But watching my team grow around me and embrace the roles they have and grow to be better. And I think if I look at what I'm most proud of is the culture we've created here, which is service, service above self. We work very hard to serve our clients every day, and we work very hard to serve each other every day. And that creates an environment where productivity is better, attitudes are better. Um, I like Richard Branson, who always said, if you have happy employees, you'll have happy clients. And not only that, if you have happy employees, they tend to be happier and more fulfilled at home when they have a good place to go to fulfill their daily obligations to take care of their families. So really it's driven by that. Is the number one driver is, we're here to take care of our families. That's why we all go to work.
Yeah.
But while we're here, we take care of each other. That allows us to take care of our clients. And that's kind of my mantra in the company of my three cares of what we do. But it allows us to have this culture that is really dynamic. We're all very flexible. We all know what the result needs to be, which is having happy clients. And sometimes the stuff we deal with does not fall into the happy category, because sometimes they're tough conversations. But our attitude is always to serve and to do what is best for the clients, the employees, and those who we serve.
Yeah. I'll never forget the first time I got to meet your leadership team, and they started telling me how long they had each been there, and I was amazed. And I thought, wow, this is, I feel like I've stumbled upon an amazing organization, because that just doesn't happen, that your entire executive team has been there double digits.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really amazing is that, to me, from a longevity standpoint, is that this leadership team has another 15 to 25-year run in them to do some really great things, and they're all committed to that. And uh, I think that's part of the reason why that I'm keeping the team together. There's been a lot of activity in the marketplace of people buying companies like mine, people like me that are looking at an exit because we've reached the end of our career, and I've just decided that the next gen of my company is going to stay in my family. My oldest daughter will be at some point in the near future, in the next 5 years, assuming my role in the company, and she's the same age as my leadership team. So there's a good 20 to 25 years left for them to continue running and to continue building something that can be really great, not really changing who we are. And I believe very strongly that we can expand our pond in Kansas. Right now, if Wichita is our pond, you know, uh, Kansas is the lake. We can be the biggest fish in the lake too, but we don't have to go outside of that to be greater, or at least in size. Um, but I think the fact that I've got a leadership team that's around, that wants to stay around for the next generation, and honestly develop their replacements in the next gen. That kind of a perpetual attitude is really satisfying to me as a founder, because it's now not like, well, I built something, then I sold it, and I got a pile of money. Uh, I didn't want that to be my legacy. And so now I look back and think, okay, this was the right move for us, not the right move for everybody.
Okay.
But I'm fortunate that I have a daughter. I have four kids, and they're all professionals and they're all really good, but I have one who's built for this. And so she's agreed that this is what she wants to do next. Um, Now, 20 years from now, I'll probably not be around, but that's okay. And what they do with the company at that point will be what they do with it at that point. But the world changed. We have to adapt. but I'm really proud of the fact that we've got something we think we can carry for another 20 years, and we're going to endeavor to do so.
Absolutely. So you mentioned just the way that the world is changing. How has HR changed from, you started this company 20 some years ago. What have you watched change?
Uh, well, the whole world has changed due to technology, obviously.
Yeah,
But I think beyond that, and we're seeing it right now in the bureaucracy that government is. Honestly, my company ceases to exist if government bureaucracy goes away, because that's who we work with. That's what we're here for, is to take care of that for our clients. So all the mandates that the clients have, from paying taxes on their employees' behalf to providing benefits on their behalf to taking care of keeping them safe at work and risk management, to all the plethora of government agencies, the alphabet soup of them, the DOL, the IRS, and everybody that we have to be in compliance with. We've just seen this explosion of compliance within government that requires small businesses to really pay attention to how they do business every day. And honestly, it's sad because it has nothing to do with them running their business. It just has everything to do with being an employer and being responsible for their employees. And that's the biggest change to me, is the explosion of it. It's obviously good for my industry.
sure.
Uh, and it doesn't matter which political side of the fence you're on, honestly. It is just the nature of the beast now that we deal with. Uh, and until that changes, there's going to be probably an even greater need for us, because government agencies change rules, government changes laws, and all those have to be adapted down to the level of the employer, which is typically who they look to take care of all this for employees. Uh, the very first thing I learned in this industry in training 26 years ago, a great icon in our industry, Carrie Aaron, taught me this sentence, and I've repeated it verbatim for 26 years. Employers are non-compensated, highly penalized tax collectors and curers of all social ills. And when you look at it through that lens, that hasn't changed. It's only grown worse. So I think from an industry standpoint, we're going to continue to grow and thrive. We're gaining traction as in acceptance. The technology piece actually allows us to be more efficient doing it. For many, many years, you just kind of threw people at the problem. Now we can throw technology at the problem.
Right.
As in some parts, it's still, even though you're dealing with people's needs change. When I grew up, we didn't grow up with computers. We didn't grow up with cell phones that could do everything. And now when I talk to my kids and even my grandkids, who are 16 years old now, what do you mean there isn't an app for that? You know?
Yes.
It's not on it. I have to go see a real person, really. So that dynamic has changed how we have to deliver services. So we have to get more information to our people faster. We have to offer technological opportunities for employees to gain access to their information faster, which helps with the efficiency. But at the end of the day, it's still about what do the clients need us to do for their employees, and then how do we go about doing that? Sometimes we have to throw people at the problem. Sometimes we have to throw technology or some combination. But it's going to continue evolving as time goes on.
Yeah.
And it isn't getting any easier. Even with technology, now you have cybersecurity and all the other things the baggage that goes with that. And obviously we're a big target as an industry simply because we house all this information for our clients, which is all the pertinent employee information. So as an aggregator, that creates even more problems and more challenges for us. So technology is great, but it also comes with its baggage to go with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So much. So my world is on the people side, and you're human resources, and I know a lot of it tends toward the compliance and the people, what people need information wise. I'm curious what you've seen the people are needing. And do you guys do anything with, just trying to keep people, I don't know, does it extend beyond, do your services extend at all beyond compliance and all of the
Oh, sure.
paperwork
Sure.
and things like that?
We do a lot of training for our clients and our employees. Our role is to be supportive of our clients in
Yeah.
any way that they need us. And I view the world from the HR lens from two perspectives. One perspective is compliance and the things you have to do to be a compliant employer. And the other world is people. And in working with our client base, there is a size where the clients start to value the people more because there's more of them and the needs that they have to grow their workplace and to grow their workforce. And so they're starting to look for more answers than compliance for us. And what we found is that when employers get larger, the compliance parts, this is especially true if they're doing all of this work themselves, they're not outsourcing it to me. The compliance part takes precedence over the people part. And what they end up doing is hiring an HR director or having an HR team whose job it is to make the people better. And what they end up doing is all compliance work. So when we like to partner with clients that have that challenge because we can take the compliance work off their plate. Because the people work, honestly, is the most important work that you're going to do. It's training, it's development, it is culture. It is all the things that a business needs to have as they grow beyond a certain size that allow them to become scalable. And if you have those things, then you can scale faster. The compliance part gets in the way of that because it basically robs your resources of people to do compliance. And our business model is meant to work with clients to take that compliance part off your plate so you can work on the people. And that's the most important part in HR. And for us, we work with our clients because we have an HR director who is concerned about the people, who's in charge of a team who's concerned about the compliance and the people. But that leadership is so key in any organization. And whether you're getting that in-house or outsourced, we do find that we're being asked a lot more to provide that leadership as well and bring resources to the table to help their culture be better. And so we're seeing that happen more often. But usually when the clients get to that size, we're talking 100, 150, 200 employees, we're recommending that they hire an HR person in-house to work with us so that that person can concentrate on the people side of the business and have us as their partner working on the compliance side. And if we're working with an HR director that sees that, they really value our contribution because I don't have to deal with that. That's just Syndeo's job.
Yeah.
I'm free to go do the things that are going to make our workplace better, which is where the real benefit of HR is.
Right. I love that model. I haven't really heard of it so far. And so I love the model of the in-house person. They have high touch to people, to work on people. And the things that are more logistics and technology based can be outsourced to someone like you.
Yeah. It is a model that's growing, honestly, with larger businesses. As an industry, the average PEO's client size is 21 employees.
Okay.
Our average client size is 69. And part of that reason is I believe that we bring more value to larger companies than smaller. But where we're seeing growth as an industry is more 300, 400, 500 person groups looking at the outsourcing model as why do I have eight employees? We talked to somebody the other day, has 600 employees. They have 10 employees in HR. And we're like, what do they all do?
Yeah.
Well, most of them are doing compliance.
Because
and when you look at it that way, they're not an efficient model. I can tell you that they are not an efficient model when you look at it through that lens. But they're also not efficient because the person that's managing those other 9 people has to spend all their time managing the people managing compliance. So they're not spending their time doing the things that are really beneficial and great for the culture. They end up directing a department that is solely focused, 90% of it is on compliance. And it's just not an efficient model. It just isn't. When you get to be 3,000 and 4,000 employees, you can make it efficient because you can have for lack of a better term, a shared services that's just like me underneath. But then you still have a vision director at the top that's seeing the vision and managing the culture and dealing with training and development of the employees and the employee base. You got to get to 1,000 employees before that scale is going to work for you. Otherwise, I am a more efficient model. And in a lot of cases, it's because they just don't know my model exists to work in concert with them. Yeah. So we're trying to have those conversations every day. It's my biggest competition, by the way, in Wichita, Kansas, is not another competitor doing what we do. It's status quo. It's people doing it the way they've always done it. and not realizing that this is maybe a better model for them so that they can grow bigger, faster, better. And that's what we try to get in front of people to talk about is let's have a business conversation about why we can help your business grow faster, grow stronger, and have better client and employee retention through having a better culture. That's how we can help you. But it's a different kind of conversation than anybody's had before. And frankly, not a lot of people are either ready or willing to have it at this point. But we're seeing more and more. Honestly, it's the younger generation,
Yeah.
my kids' age, that are coming up saying, why do we have to keep doing it this way? This doesn't
Do it
work.
this way.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thankful that I'm aging out of the business and that I have a younger generation ready to grow it beyond. But that's where the growth is going to be, is in a lot of companies recognizing that doing HR in-house is not a winning proposition if you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And we do the compliance side right, and we bring all the tools necessary to do it right, and the people as well as the technology. And we want you to go do what you do right. And together we can really help you get a lot bigger. We've had one client that's been with us for, I guess, 7 or 8 years. They started with like 3 or 4 hotels and they had 50 employees. They're up to 800 employees and they envision never having HR in-house.
We're like, why would
Because
we? This is
why
great.
would we? Right. Why would we when we have you? And they know it costs money, but they also know it costs money to do it yourself. And at the end of the day, you don't save any money doing it yourself. And then you've just created another headache for yourself. So it's really a different conversation that in the future, I think is going to help our business grow even more. But we've got a lot of great examples of clients who've done this and see the value in it. And now we're just pursuing more of those to try to spread our wings here where we are.
Yeah, I think you're right. The status quo gets in the way and it's so difficult for people to try something new. And I've run into that just trying to convince CEOs that, hey, you've got to take care of your people and, let me help you. Like, you don't want to add another thing to your plate, but I can help you to do this. And
Right.
then it becomes win-win.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you have really hit on culture matters, and really your service to companies is creating space so they can work on their culture. I'm curious if you have made any mistakes in the past with culture creation or really anything. You've talked about a lot of times you got knocked down. I assume that sometimes you knocked yourself down and had to come to recover. So,
Right. I've been very fond of saying for quite some time that you definitely have a culture. It's either by default or design or by design. I started early trying to do it by design, and I learned that some of the things I thought we needed to be weren't the right things we needed to be. And sometimes I had, the wrong people on the bus that didn't share that vision. And I've had a couple of people that were with me that helped me build it to the stage we were that needed to move on because they couldn't help me get it to the stage I wanted us to be. Um, and they were very valuable employees to me. They were very important to me, and saying goodbye or moving on from them was very difficult. Uh, but sometimes you just look in the mirror and say, it's time. It's time to move on. Here's where we're going to go. Uh, and that's probably the biggest lessons I've had to learn is to be more candid and frank with the people that are not on board with where I want to go, to say, well, if you can't get on board with this, and this is important to me, then I need to understand, are you going to work on yourself to get on board, or are you going to work against me to prevent it from happening? And we don't have that as much anymore, simply because we're at a different place in our company, and they're actually exited out sooner. And so they don't make it to the level where they can influence me with what they want versus what I want. And I'm not saying that I always know the best thing going down the road, but I'm really, really big on what's next. And just continuing to be status quo ourselves was never something I could be satisfied with. And so it's really taken, usually those dynamics were exposed when I said, okay, what's next? Where do we go next? And it's like, well, why can't we stay here? Well, because here isn't good enough. We got to do what's next. So
That is not who Bill Maness is. He
No,
is
it isn't.
still, and we're going to keep
Yeah.
growing. And I think that's been the fun thing learning about you is that, you said you're in the twilight season of your career, and yet you are still learning, growing, moving, planning.
Well, I'm obviously not dead yet, but
Oh,
I also bring a lot of energy to the company because my ideas, I never stop thinking about them.
yeah.
I never stop thinking about what can be. Um, and there are just some things that for me, if I learned anything from my elders of watching people exit their businesses and then slowly dwindle and maybe not have as fulfilling a life later on in years as maybe they could have or should have. Um, the thing that keeps me going is the fact that I still love what we do. I still love being involved. I'm still engaged mentally. I still have the capacity mentally to work in this. Physically, less so. I don't have the energy level that I used to have. But what I've learned is that I used to have an unending energy that would not stop till 11 at night or midnight, and then I get up at 6 a.m. ready to go again. Now my energy level has a finite amount to it, and I have to just say, okay, it's time to go rest now. Naps are good. That's not a bad thing. Naps are good. Uh, but I still am mentally engaged enough to where I want to continue doing this for a little while longer and still keep this thing going.
I imagine that's what keeps it interesting. It would get boring if it stayed the same.
Yeah. I might as well be retired if that's the case, and
Yeah.
let this be somebody else's uh, ship to sail, so to speak, and be so in. But everybody's better interest would be served if I was out of the way, if that was my attitude. So I'm glad it's not at this point.
Yeah. Well, Bill, one of the things that neuroscience is teaching us is that so much of our leadership qualities are formed by our past experiences. And, you've said that I've just had it in me and that I'm going to be the hardest worker. I know who I am. You're pretty defined in who you are and what you need to be successful and full of life. And I'm curious if there were experiences early in your life that just built some of that into you.
I don't know. I was I don't want to say I was built different than all the. I grew up in a small town with two parents that worked. We lived a very classic middle class life until I got to high school, and my dad made a career change. My mom was working really, really hard. My dad's career change didn't wasn't very fruitful in the beginning, so we had a fewer leaner years. Um, they didn't let on that that's how it was, but I could tell that that's what it was. But I think my beginnings, I don't know. I was even in my own family, I was built really different, and I can't explain why. I just was, and I had a mom that nurtured me, a father who uh, showed me probably more bad examples than good about what to do in business. I wouldn't say as a person he was a bad person, but in business, he taught me some things early of things you don't want to do, and a lot of times it was out of his ignorance, uh, but a lot of times it was because he made bad choices, and they were not necessarily because he didn't want to do the right thing, but because of the choices he had, he felt like he didn't have a choice but doing a thing that ended up being not the right thing to do. Uh, Nothing illegal, nothing anything like that, but choosing whether to pay your employees or pay taxes. That's a tough choice as a young businessman and a business that's not doing really well. And in the long run, you're better off laying some people off and paying the taxes than you are not, because if you get caught in that cycle, then you're bankrupt and then you have no employees. So, it's just some little things that I learned along the way from that environment. And then when I got out on my own, just lessons of what's a good fit for me. I went through a divorce at a very young age. I had two children very early in my 20s, early 20s, and then a divorce after 5 years. And, I talk about being a canoe without a rudder or an oar. I just was just floating. I didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. Um, and I just kind of said one day, okay, I got to get an apartment. I got to find a way to make a living so that I can support me and my kids. I just got to do it. And it meant taking some jobs that I didn't necessarily want to take, but they were a means to an end. And the end was to get my bills paid. That was it. And then I learned some things and networked and I was always kind of a salesy guy. So I always did the things naturally the salesy guys do, which is, you know, we want to meet more people. We want to see more people. We want to get more opportunities out of things. And then that led me to different career changes that led me down different paths and got me to where, you know, I kind of evolved to, I think it was age 40 where I finally said, okay, it's time to grow up. It's time to really take seriously what you've learned and apply it and go do something that's going to make a difference. And at 43, I started my own company. So, it was a culture change. It was different. It was really not about the money then. It was more about what do I want to be when I grow up, and I'm almost grown up now. I'm literally at midlife at 40 years of age, and I got nothing to show for it. It's time to get serious, and I just did. So
Well, I think your story is so similar to many of ours that, we don't have it figured out in our 20s, 30s, but it's some of our failures and watching and learning from others' failures and successes. Like
yeah.
our experiences don't have to all be positive. A lot of times we learn the most from our own mistakes and sometimes from important figures in our lives, like you and your dad.
Well, and it's interesting. I think that one thing I gave my kids that ended up being what I didn't learn from my parents uh, was to have a plan. All of my kids are professionals. I have a son my oldest son is a licensed appraiser and works in the appraisal audit business. He knew going to college he wanted to be a real estate appraiser. My oldest daughter was a CPA, knew she wanted to do accounting, graduated to uh, hedge funds and then graduated to private equity and became a partner in a private equity firm and is now retired at 46, done very well. My other daughter is a CPA, just joined a new firm, is on a partnership track with them. And my youngest son's a professional engineer. They all knew coming out of high school what they wanted to do. And I think it comes from the fact that their mother and I both said, here's what you're good at. Here's what you need to look at. Pick a career that you're good at.
Yeah.
And they all kind of came out of school going, okay, I'm good at that. I'm going to go do that. And they've all done it. And I think, they probably tolerate risk a lot less than I do. But they had a lot more direction and a lot more vision of who they wanted to be a lot younger than I did.
And it's, yeah, yielded its results.
Right.
One of the things that I help leaders to understand are that really all of our whole everything, all of our behaviors, responses kind of come down to four different capacities. And the first one is our capacity to connect with people. Can we interact in a way that's safe and vulnerable, but also the second one is, are we defined and boundaried? Do we know who we are? And even though I'm connected to other people, I'm also me. This is my set of gifts and strengths, and be able to make decisions out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just see that playing out. So that's two of the four, but I see those playing out in what you learned and then were able to pass on to your kids.
Yeah. Well, I'm just happy that they listened because as a kid I didn't. But then again, I didn't get that kind of direction either. And it was really more of if I'm going to give you any gift, I'm going to try to send you to college so you can learn a trade, a professional trade, and get into something that you're good at. And then what you do with that is going to be completely up to you.
Yeah.
And fortunately for all of them, it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So.
Think an example, another space where your leadership has really shown. So,
Well, my wife would argue that it's not leadership, it's parenting. But she was better at parenting than I was. I will tell you
which
that.
I believe parenting is one of the hardest forms of leadership. So
Yeah,
kudos to both of you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bill, as we get ready to wrap up here, I'm just curious, as you move into these last years, what what do you want your leadership legacy to be?
Well, previous to this conversation, you said you were going to ask me that question. And of all the questions you said you were going to ask me, they were all easy. I already had all those answers. I didn't have that answer. But I think what I came down to was a simple statement of he had a vision of what was possible and spent a life pursuing it.
Love it. Love it.
That I can't really add anything to that because it's like I've always been about what's next. I've always thought about the positive things and outcomes. And I've always thought that if we work really hard to try to make a difference, that we'll be rewarded for it in some way, shape, or form. And I've been really lucky uh, in my success because it's really been based on that simple tenet. If we just work really hard and work really hard to serve each other, then the rewards will be there. And I'm fortunate that it worked out. I mean, I'm sure there are examples of people that had that same altruistic vision, didn't quite figure out how to make it happen. But I've been really lucky to have surrounded myself with people every step of the way that helped me get where we are today. And I've got a team around me now that's going to take it way beyond what I ever dreamed it could be. So
A beautiful legacy, and I think you're on your way. So, thank you so much for just sharing your time with us and our listeners. And um, I hope to chat with you another time.
it has been my pleasure. Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.